Hi, my name's Phil. I like talking about politics, and if you thought the Baltimore Bridge collapse was spectacular and shocking in equal measure, you may not have been paying attention to what the Tories were getting up to yesterday. Their London Mayoral campaign began with a disgraceful series of attacks on the capital, in which they used footage of New York, which, despite their claims that they know what's best for London, none of them actually clocks the fact they were using footage of a completely different country, never mind metropolis. Then Rishi Sunak faced the cross-party group of MPs forming the liaison committee and reminded us all that he's going to be spectacularly awful in debates and interviews during the general election campaign. And then to top it all off, Sunak made Jonathan Gullis a deputy chair of the Tory party. You know, just in case anyone still thinks they're a serious political party. But first, if you'd like to be notified of daily news and politics, please subscribe to the channel. So yeah, feel a lot better today. Thank you very much. Just a few aches and a bit of a cough now. So let's kick off with the Tory campaign for Mayor of London. They issued a video painting London as this like dystopian city of violence and squalor. They argued that Khan had seized power. He hadn't seized power, of course. He won. How would that even work with a Conservative government running the country? In fact, he won power on 2 occasions and is very likely to get his hat-trick this year. The video included scenes of New York. So when people asked how the Tory candidate Susan Hall did not spot this, she said, oh, well, it was provided by CCHQ. But apart from the fact that her defence is that her party's campaign headquarters are not the slick campaigning machine that they'd like to think they are, still doesn't explain why she didn't spot it. Needless to say, the video was community noted into oblivion on Twitter. But here's the thing. The entire premise of the video was at the level of the gutter. But because the claims were wholly untrue, what the video actually shows is, for the millions who watched it and don't know any better, is that London is a dangerous place to visit. When, of course, no. So what the Tories are doing is basically warning people not to visit London. Now, for a city whose economy largely depends on recreational and business visitors, what the Tories are doing here, without any justification, because like I say, the claims are wholly false, is trying to damage London's appeal and economy. If Labour forcefully make this point, that video should backfire on the Tories badly. But yesterday's liaison committee meeting with Rishi Sunak was the biggest train wreck of all. When the House of Commons goes into recess, as it has for Easter now, it's customary for the Prime Minister to face questions from the liaison committee as the last thing to do. This is a cross-party group of MPs whose role is specifically to scrutinise the work of the Prime Minister. So the questions, they're not about the party's record in government going back 14 years. It's just the current Prime Minister's specific determination of policies and outcomes. And Sunak was absolutely woeful. I mean, let's go over some of the lowlights. Sunak denied that councils are facing a funding crisis, despite the fact that the Tories, since they assumed power in 2010, have cut central funding for councils by 50% in real terms, and many are now going bust. Although the Tories keep citing Labour councils as going to the wall, there are actually more cases of Conservative councils doing so, but ultimately council funding is largely determined by central government, and they have been cutting it savagely. So when he was asked about these funding projections, he dismissed them as speculative. Oh, you can't base it on these figures. And it's like, but they were basing it on the government's own figures. The figures that they have used to form the budgets that we had earlier this month. He's going to have to do better than this during the general election campaign, although I'm not sure he will. He was then asked, at one point he was asked about Liz Truss's comments that she was undermined as Prime Minister by the deep state, going full MAGA. Sunak laughed a bit awkwardly and said it was a question for her rather than him. I'm not sure that's true. He's the Prime Minister and leader of his party. If one of his MPs and his immediate predecessor is spreading conspiracy theories, it's very much a matter for him. You know, you could argue it's more of a matter for him as leader of the party than Prime Minister if you like, but you cannot say it's not a matter for him. Like Andrew Bridgen lost the whip for spreading conspiracy theories. So why doesn't Sunak think it's at least worth discussing action for the same thing from another MP? And why this was a particularly poor response as well from Sunak is he's trying to attract two sort of antagonistic types of voter, and this just repels them both. So there are those, like you might call traditional Conservatives, who deplore the idea of an influential Tory MP going full Donald Trump and blaming her downfall on conspiracies. For those people, Sunak wasn't taking the issue seriously. Oh, go and ask her, I can't be asked. To those who want to believe the conspiracy theories, that the reason the mad ideas they're told are brilliant ideas don't work, it's not because the people who try to implement them are reckless idiots and the ideas are fundamentally unworkable. Oh, no, it's because a secret cabal has blocked them. Sunak wasn't taking that claim seriously either. It's like he's willing to go along with the idea of the culture wars for political gain, but he can't take the ideas seriously himself. Basically, Sunak is too useless to attract serious voters and too serious to attract the crank voters. And this sort of response exposes that. Another issue that Sunak didn't seem to think was his job was getting refugees to Rwanda with his ratty plan. He was asked if he'd managed to source an actual plane to implement the policy when his bill passes into law. Sunak replied that you wouldn't expect him to go into details like that. Yes, we would. He claims he has a plan to send refugees to Rwanda, specifically on a plane. So actually having a plane to do it is a fairly crucial detail. And all he had to do was answer yes or no. Do you have a plane ready? Given that Sunak is not talking about, like, we're not talking about a vague policy for the future, something that might go in the manifesto, right? And he's got a couple of years to work out how to do it. No, this is a policy his party has been pushing for 2 years. And he acts like it's going to be put into operation within a matter of weeks. In fact, if the Lords hadn't, carried on putting amendments onto it, it would be law now. And he would presumably, according to his original plan, he would have been sending people already. So he must have a plane ready, right? So we can absolutely expect him to discuss the detail of how he manages that. Does he have a plane? Or is he going to try to catapult them across Europe into Central Africa? He was also asked about protecting Afghans who'd worked with the British Army in Afghanistan. It is, of course, both a moral outrage and practical cock-up that we've not protected those allies and make it easy for them to claim asylum after the Taliban were basically let loose again. But the idea that any Afghan who might make it to the UK, because we're not opening up safe routes, even for people from Afghanistan, where even Tories cannot say it's a safe country. But we still don't have safe routes for them. But the idea that any Afghan who actually does make it to the UK, via a small boat, for example, could be sent to Rwanda is despicable. So MPs, even Tory MPs know this is wrong. So MPs tried to present a motion to Parliament which would protect those refugees from the Rwanda scheme. It says, look, you're not including Afghan refugees in this. And Sunak whipped his MPs to vote against it. So he was asked why. He refused to answer, saying he didn't like the question. Oh, he's going to be an absolute whiz in the general election, isn't he? Imagine the TV debates or an interview, somebody's put to him, oh, I don't like that question, ask me another. Ask me what my favourite colour is. According to reports, Sunak wants to take part in as many TV debates as possible. On the basis of this performance, as well as previous car crashes, you can only imagine he thinks it less damaging to do TV debates, where I suppose he'll at least have a Tory shill filtering the questions, than it will be to talk to people on the street. Mind you, as Starmer doesn't, Starmer wants to get out and about. He's not going to give Sunak loads and loads of TV debates. It'll be like, yeah, you can have 3 or something and not GB News. It's also worth pointing out that as bad as that performance in front of the liaison committee was, Sunak knew it could have been way, way worse. Why? The government published a report yesterday on our management of borders, but they did so at the end of the committee hearing. They held it back. They held back the publication to make sure that none of the MPs on the committee could have a quick read of the report and ask questions about it. And just as well, because the report painted a picture of widespread visa abuse. So for all the talk of their shiny new post-Brexit visa system for immigration, they don't actually have the systems in place to make it work. And I don't just mean work like, as they would have it. I mean, just like function at a basic level. The system leaves vulnerable people open to slavery and destitution, it said, which we knew, but is now in an official report. Checks for foreign care workers are also failing, it says. It was a damning assessment of the border control that Brexiteers are always going on about. You read the report and we already know that there's no real management of our trade borders, but this one's saying there's no management of borders for migrants either. But although Sunak dodged questions on this yesterday, the report has now been published, so he can be asked questions on it later on. And also think about who this report gives the most ammunition to: Reform UK. Then, as Rishi Sunak stood amongst the carnage wrought by his incompetence and the other associated murder clowns in his party, he decided on one last party trick to cap the day off. He made Jonathan Gullis a deputy chair of the party. According to some reports, the move did not go down well amongst, shall we say, at least some Tory MPs. I'm wondering why Sunak did it, though. I get it from Gullis's point of view. He's not actually going to be tempted to defect Reform UK. He's not going to do that. But he knows he's on his way out. So, of late, he's made a real show of loyalty to Sunak, and Sunak has rewarded it. Gullis likely just wants to pad his CV ahead of ejection from Parliament. But I don't get it from Sunak's point of view. As far as can be told, Sunak gave the same job to Lee Anderson out of fear of him defecting to Reform UK last year, because it came after Lee Anderson said, "Oh, Reform UK are going to pay me £500,000 if I defect to them." The same's not going to be true of Gullis. And as for Gullis's loyalty, of what value is that to Sunak? There are many words which can be used to describe Jonathan Gullis. Formidable is not one of them. He would not represent a serious challenge to Sunak, even if he went full Andrea Jenkins and publicly called every single day for Sunak to step down, which I doubt he would. He doesn't have that gravitas, even within his own party. The move just looks ridiculous, and it is ridiculous. Finally, two junior ministers not only announced they were stepping down for the election, but resigned their government jobs with immediate effect. One had already announced that they were going to do it, so it wasn't a surprise. The other one was a surprise, but they both left their ministerial roles yesterday. More visible reminders that the rats are taking to the lifeboats as well, particularly as one of those MPs has not been an MP for that long. They haven't even been an MP for 10 years. It's not like, the other one, after 20 years, you can say, okay, I mean, maybe that's all you can stomach in Parliament, 20 years, yeah, okay. Less than 10 years? No, I don't buy that. I don't buy that. So, yeah, this is absolutely a case of rats leaving the sinking ship. It's exactly what it looks like, regardless of the genuine reasons. But there we are. Those are my thoughts. Let me know yours in the comments below. Hope you found the video interesting. If you did, please click the like button. And if you'd like to support the channel further, the join button for memberships. And until next time, I'll see you later.